In this week's show, we speak to Peter Muscat, former assistant to Chris Waller, about the world's top-ranked turf horse and wonder mare Winx. We catch up with Mike de Kock about the Breeders' Cup and Mubtaahij, who takes his place in the Classic for Bob Baffert. But first, let's go to Greyville and the Polytrack to have a chat to Kurt Groenewald. The perceived draw bias at the Greyville Polytrack has been a topic of conversation, or rather debate, in recent weeks. Kurt, what track maintenance do you do with regard to consistency and compaction of the Polytrack surface?
Michelle, obviously it depends on what weather conditions we've had, dictates, especially with the deep, what I call a deep maintenance when we use the power harrow. Otherwise, generally it's the Gallop Master. But we have a tool called a dibber. It's basically a stainless steel bar with a few depth measurements on it. And we push that into the surface to ensure depth consistency across the length and breadth of the track. And also, if we haven't power harrowed for a while, you can actually feel resistance going into the surface, and it gives you an indication of the tightness of the surface, and that probably does need, at that point, a deep harrow.
Besides your regular maintenance equipment that's on the track, what other traffic is there on the surface?
Michelle, there are vehicles that do come onto the Polytrack. We generally keep them on the outside, especially around the bend where no one races. And now and again, if we're doing some fertilizer treatment on the turf track, because of the bulk we manhandle, it's easier to come on the outside of the Polytrack down the straight or up the straight. But the track then gets prepped for race day. We don't leave it as such to create an overly compacted area. Then we go in with the deep harrow with the Gallop Masters, and we take care of all that. And then again, to make doubly sure, we use the Clegg hammer to do our compaction test to ensure that there is no unevenness or firmness on one side of the track to the other.
There is the belief that winners do come down the outside of the track. What could possibly be the reason for that?
Michelle, if you look at the bend, it is quite a tight bend. So, and if the horses are coming from behind, if they need to get a run, they're obviously going to have to move out wide, and that'll force them to the outside of the track. If you look at it, it is very tight. It's probably closer to a Mauritius type bend than Port Elizabeth. So, yeah, with that tightness, it is going to, with the guys coming in, especially in the sprint races with momentum, if you watch the longer distance races, the guys do generally move to the outside eventually, but they hang on the inside a lot longer down the straight before moving out wide.
It's a view shared by many.
Always up the straight. I know Anton's a great one for it. He'll come off that false rail and he'll go straight for the outside. So, he'll obviously know a lot more about it than I do. But judging from what we do see, from the middle to outside, they always, in that last 100 metres, you try and make all on the poly, there's something that'll always come on the outside and do you.
I saw the other night a horse ran short dead second right up the inside of the track, looked to have every chance. The winner was right on the outside.
You can see it all the time. I mean, horses making up ground on the outside. I don't know what it is. So obviously there's more compaction on the outside than the inside.
But I think if you had to go through all the races run on the Polytrack, a huge percentage of them would be right on the outside of the Polytrack.
Well, we did just that. Statistics from 5 of the recent Polytrack meetings at Greyville, after racing resumed on the 22nd of September, showed that there is no draw bias, with winners coming from across the stall gates, the most successful draws being 12, 3 and 7. However, whilst there may be no draw bias, the same couldn't be said for where on the track the winners made their final run to the line. Of the 45 races in the sample, not one winner finished down the inside. A hefty 71% won on the outside, with the remaining 29 coming down the middle of the track. In your view, is there a reason for that?
Look, I wouldn't be able to tell people why. Being an artificial surface, it should be level throughout.
Yeah.
Whether it's maybe got a degree of change because of the angle of the turn. I think it's a very sharp track, and I think our riders that can judge pace very well, like get up handy in races and control the pace to a degree where they're running off. They're not going to run down the inside of the track. They're going to run off to the outside in any case because of the angle of the turn. And with them doing that, maybe it just makes it look more pertinent to get to the outside of the Polytrack. It's just an opinion that I've got.
Because there's this perception that there is this bias, everyone's going to head there naturally, because I think that's where they're going to get the better running.
We did have a spur on the Polytrack coming into the straight. Did that at one stage encourage horses to go to the outside?
Michelle, yeah, even more so than now. It actually forced them. They had no option but to go to the outside, and that's why we actually eventually removed it, because it was throwing every single horse to the outside. Everyone had to follow the other to get a run. With the removal of the spurs now opened up the track, and the guys can run the full width.
Do you think it's somewhat habitual then that they tend to go towards the outside rail?
I think it is, and obviously, you know, again, it's sort of like a self-perpetuating cycle. If 90% of your runners go to the outside, 90% of your winners are more likely going to come from the outside. So it builds that perception that there's a bias. But when the bulk of your field are running there, obviously, the bulk of your winners are going to come from that side.
Barrow Boy has won it. Second place will go to Sharp Seattle, Risky Roscoe and Astro Man.
Michelle, yeah, you know, it's been a long learning curve for us, getting used to the surface. But one thing is, once we've prepped it for race day, we know that it's consistent and it's safe from start to finish. The likelihood of horses getting injured, yes, injuries happen, unfortunately, in any surface. But the consistency in all weather conditions, be it baking hot sun or raining conditions, the consistency is there and the safeness is there.
It's been a month since racing returned to Greyville on September the 22nd, after the Polytrack area was extended by 100 metres. Kurt, what was the reason for the extension?
Michelle, the Polytrack ended just behind us, basically 10 metres beyond that light pole, and there was a concrete base beneath that, and that hold water, and that would then surface water then would run into the grass pull-up area, and that would make it mushy. And over and above that, if we had excessive rain, obviously the turf's going to get a lot softer. So we were going from a safe, consistent surface to a very unsure surface. So for safety reasons, and also for racing to continue through inclement weather.
How has the extension gone?
According to plan, actually, the construction was all on cue. We had weather played ball from our side, except for on the oceans. High seas and winds kept the ship out of the harbour, and that was carrying the wax for the binder for the surface. And fortunately, what we were able to do is we retrieved some material from the 2,000 metre mark of the existing surface, brought it into the new pull-up area, laid that down, had to shorten one race from the 2,000 to the 1,900 metre to accommodate obviously the loss of material. And basically the surface we're standing on now was put in last week, and we had our first full race meeting on a complete track from the 2,000 to the new pull-up on this past Sunday.
I think it was a very good idea on the part of Gold Circle. I think extending the pull-up helps the riders to slow the horses down slower than they used to in the past, because you are obviously trying not to go off a very fast pace onto a different surface.
Yes.
And now you've got a more even surface to stop the horses on. And I think to a large degree the slower a horse slows down after a race, the less susceptible you are to injury.
With it being extended like this, do most horses pull up by the time they get to the end of the Polytrack before going onto the grass?
Michelle, obviously it depends on your distance. The sprinters will probably still be a little longer in pulling up, but by the time they hit the grass section, they're basically down to a canter. Your longer distances, obviously the horses are a little more tired by the time they reach the finishing post. So yeah, generally they're all pulled up before they hit the grass.
I would have loved to seen it gone right through to the road, where you actually come into the golf course, because you go poly turf and then another road and then over again. But saying it must be an improvement, because there was a problem before.
What feedback have you had?
There's been no feedback, but generally in this business, no feedback is good feedback.
So all systems go with this new extension then, Kurt?
Yeah, Michelle, we're not foreseen any obstacles in wet weather conditions like we've had before, which is fair. The jockeys felt it was unsafe going from the safe surface or consistent surface to the soft, mushy conditions of the turf, which is now been taken away.
The world's top-ranked turf horse Winx has won 21 consecutive stakes races at distances ranging from 1,300 to 2,200 metres. 14 of these have been Group 1 races alone. In 2017, she was inducted into the Australian Hall of Fame, being only the third horse to earn this honour while still in training. Her 21st win in the recent Turnbull Stakes on October the 7th at Melbourne's Flemington Racetrack took her total earnings to 13.7 million Australian dollars. Ridden by her regular jockey Hugh Bowman for trainer Chris Waller, the 6-year-old mare overpowered her rivals over the 2,200-metre trip by 6.5 lengths.
But it's all Winx, 5 or 6 lengths in front. Look at her go with 100 metres to go. 21 today on the biggest dance floor of them all. Winx by 8 lengths. Ventura Storm second, Humidor third.
Someone who has worked with Chris Waller and been associated with Winx from the time she was a yearling up until a year ago is our very own Peter Muscat, assistant trainer to Brett Crawford. It must have been wonderful to have worked with a horse the calibre of Winx.
She's phenomenal. She's an absolute freak. She defies a lot of the things that I've seen with really top horses over the years, and she just takes it all to a new level.
What makes her the athlete that she is?
First of all, she's got a temperament from heaven. Nothing phases her. She goes out, does her work. She's probably too enthusiastic about her work, hence the use of earmuffs on a daily basis in her work. And she comes back and she just eats. So she is the ultimate athlete.
Unlike many elite racehorses, Winx does not have a particularly long stride. Her stride was measured at 6.76 metres, compared to nearly 8.5 metres for Black Caviar and Far Lap. Instead, her success has been attributed to a freakish stride rate that allows her to take 14 strides every 5 seconds, compared to 12 for her rivals. Every minute Winx is in full motion, she takes 170 strides. That's 30 more than the average racehorse. Many people think that the horse with the biggest stride will always win, but Winx is turning conventional wisdom on its head. Does she have any idiosyncrasies?
She actually is a very, very sweet filly, and when you're in her box and dealing with her, there's no hint of any sort of animosity or anything in her. She's one of those mares that'll come up to you in the box and she wants a cuddle. But obviously, being in the limelight as she has been for so many years now, she probably is getting the needle to that. So the emphasis is on in the yard to actually take the pressure off her and not have everyone sort of wanting to have their photo taken with Winx.
By the Irish-bred Street Cry, who won the Dubai World Cup in 2002, Winx was sold as a yearling for 230,000 Australian dollars at the 2013 Magic Millions Gold Coast sale. She was part of a draft of horses from Coolmore Stud and was purchased to a budget by a partnership of Magic Bloodstock Racing. When she first came into the yard as a juvenile, was there anything particular about her that would have led you to believe what was to come?
On the initial heart rate readings that we took on her, it appeared that she was something special.
Just explain that.
Well, she's got a phenomenal heart rate recovery. You can gallop her what they call 5 and 2 in Australia, which is a pretty testing gallop, and her heart rate decreases to below 100 beats per minute, 1 minute post gallop. So anything that is capable of doing that is certainly capable of winning a Group 1 in Australia.
Peter, is she the type of horse who changes lives?
Well, it's phenomenal the following she's got in Australia. You know, people have sort of just embraced her as their own basically, and there's fan clubs, and she's got her own website. It's basically mass hysteria when she goes to races, you know, so people sort of come crowding around trying to get a glimpse of her, a pat of her. So it's really great to see that they really have got fully behind Winx. Well, I certainly think she is a one in a lifetime horse, and Chris Waller would certainly concur with that. You know, he's trained many top horses over the years, but she's once again taken all that to a new level. As far as being involved with another one like her, it'll have to be very good to even come close.
As the champion eyes a 22nd consecutive win and a third Cox Plate this weekend, the 28th of October, she has already surpassed Far Lap's record of 14 straight wins and is closing in on Black Caviar's mark of 25. It's a date not to be missed. We round off the show with a look at the 2017 Breeders' Cup, which is set to take place at Del Mar, California on the 3rd and 4th of November. In thoroughbred racing, these championships are the culmination of the horse racing season, not only in the US, but worldwide. The card is headed by the $6 million Breeders' Cup Classic, run over 1¼ miles and open to horses 3 years and older. It's limited to just 14 starters. One of those this year is none other than the former Mike de Kock inmate, Mubtaahij. He did de Kock proud with a win in the UAE Derby and places in the 2016 and 17 Dubai World Cup. He's continued to train on, now in the care of Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. Mike, it must be rewarding for you to see a horse like this, particularly at top level, continue to go on with these kind of performances.
Yeah, Michelle, I mean, obviously he's by Dubai, so they generally get better as they get older. And if one looks at Dubai's record of horses, when they're 5 and 6, they tend to be at their best and, you know, going on and winning at 7 and 8. So he's a horse we always rated highly, and he ran at the highest level. Or, you know, I mean, he ran in the Belmont and races like in the Kentucky Derby, obviously the World Cup there. And he was a very sound horse, you know. He all but won a Group 1 with Kieran McLaughlin the year we sent him after he ran second to California Chrome. He was beaten on the line in a Group 1 over a mile.
Yes.
So he's a very capable horse, and he's always had it in him. But he's always been just short of California Chromes and Arrogates and all those kind of horses. He is a really, really top horse.
Yes.
But, you know, those horses he has to sort of raise his game to go to beat.
Baffert sends out an arsenal of 4 runners in the Classic. How do you rank him amongst the stable runners?
Well, obviously, I would say a horse like Arrogate's going to be very hard to beat. I mean, he's a very, very, very honest horse, Mubtaahij, and when he gets on the track, he does his best. There's no doubt about it. And if, you know, Arrogate doesn't get a good trip or gets into trouble, etc., or isn't at his best on the day, certainly he could be all over him. But you know, I mean, Baffert's obviously not going to run the horse for nothing. But I would say that there's 1 or 2 others he probably fancies a little bit more.
Do you think a horse like Mubtaahij can take on Gunrunner?
Well, Gunrunner, I mean, there's another fantastic horse in my opinion.
Yes.
I saw him in Dubai and he won the World Cup there.
Yes.
He is going to lift. He's going to have to lift it to another level to beat a horse like Gunrunner. Certainly, what I knew about the Mubtaahij, I would have thought that Gunrunner was a better horse, but he may have improved a bit with that. You never know, as he's got older. Yeah. But he would have to raise his game by, I would say, another 3-4 lengths to beat Gunrunner. That's for sure. Gunrunner's a super horse.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a wonderful race, as it always is. Just going forward, is there the possibility that Mubtaahij might join you again in Dubai next year?
I doubt it. You know what I mean? To be honest with you, it's been quite frustrating training for them these days, because, you know, when you get horses right, you find them, you buy them, and then they move on to someone else in America. You know, it's never pleasant for the trainer. I mean, I understand sometimes things are going to be done for the good of the horse.
Yes.
But it can become a bit frustrating being Bob Baffert's pre-trainer.
I do understand, but it's taking nothing away from what the horse accomplished with you, and we're certainly very proud of him and what you have accomplished.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, but, you know, when you find those horses, I mean, you know, to be honest, you know, other trainers are also getting big budgets and going out to purchasing horses and finding nothing. And, you know, you and your team find the horse, and then you lose it. It can be a little frustrating. They don't come around. Horses this good don't come around every day, especially a good third horse.
We'll be watching the Classic closely, and we do hope that he runs a wonderful race, because he still carries our hearts in a lot of respects.
No, for sure. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we as South Africans like to lay claim to him. He's done us proud.
Yeah.
He's flown our flag, and he's taken us to a Kentucky Derby and a Belmont.
Yes.
And, you know, he'll always be certainly for our stable in our hearts, you know. But as I said, it's a bit frustrating these days, losing good horses all the time.
Yeah, no, I do understand that. But we do wish him well, and we wish you well, Mike, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much.